Hi everyone and welcome to Sweet Stitches Quilt Shop. I'm Joan and today is First Friday Demonstration Day for September. Today our theme is Finish Line, and not all the quilts that are in this have been finished all the way, of course. There's always going to be a finish line in quilting, and some projects are going to get to the finish line faster than others. So I'm going to show you from the start line to the finish line a couple of different quilts and projects for winter and fall. So let's get started. So the first thing that I wanted to show you was I did a mystery quilt with String Along Quilt Guild. They meet here in Porter, and I always have flyers for anybody interested in joining the Quilt Guild. I'm a big fan of quilt guilds. I think you learn a lot. You meet a lot of quilters who share the same interest as you. So it's a great way to go and learn more about quilting. And the group of ladies that are running it right now are just the sweetest. So we're always happy to help them with a summer mystery. And we're also going to be visiting them at their quilt retreat that they're going to have coming up here in September. We'll be visiting on Friday. So we look forward to that every year, and we'll share some demos and bring some different projects for them to make and do a little shopping while they're at the retreat. So the summer mystery lasts 3 months, and so June, July, and August. So we just finished it up, so I thought I'd share what we made this year. I'm not going to give you dimensions because that was part of being Quilt Guild members. But you're welcome to come in and look at the quilt here in the shop. We made the quilt out of one block. And so the first month we made the 4-patch that goes in the middle. And then the second month we added the log cabin strips that go along around the 4-patch. And then in the third month we put it all together. And for mine I put it on point. So we had half of the blocks were white on the edge and half of the blocks were black, and I'm going to hold up the quilt here for you so you can see it, but it makes like a zigzag effect in the quilt. It was really neat, and a lot of the members didn't do theirs in black and white with a pop of color, and you'll see Darla's after this one, and she did a totally different colorway for hers. So we're excited to see everyone's reveal in November at the local Quilt Guild meeting. And if you think you would want to join Quilt Guild, we have flyers right here all about the guild and how to join at the shop. They're at the checkout. So you'll have to come in and get some info on that. So this is the quilt block. And it's kind of like I'm going to just call it a 4-patch log cabin, basically. But it's really kind of hard to see. But the quilt blocks are on point. It makes this black and white zigzag pattern. And then we fill in the on-point rows with black solid triangles, and then a black border that went around that, so that the blocks kind of float in the black background. So this was a really fun one to do this year. We had a lot of good participation in it, and thank you for all the guild members that came in and bought a lot of black and white fabrics for making their quilts. Under that one you can see that we have Darla's quilt, and this is the only quilt here today that actually crossed the finish line, and she just finished the binding on this today. Her quilt was done in aquas and taupe colors because this matches her house, and it was all done out of her stash at home. So that was one of the perks of doing this, is to use up your stash. And if you needed extra fabrics, you came in and got some. So she used all of hers, like I said, was out of her stash, and it matches her home. And she did a really lovely job on it, and it has a whole different look to it than the black and white. I'm struggling with that one a little bit. It's heavy. So the next thing I have to show you is a panel that we got in. Actually, Darla suggested this one to get for the quilt shop. and it's a songbook. It's by Moda Fabrics, and they are all hymnal songs from church hymnals. And what Darla has done with it is really, really kind of cute, so I wanted to show it. She's going to make this into a class. So if you have the panel, save it, and we'll hopefully have a class maybe on the calendar in October when we've moved over to the new building. So what she made out of it were these cute little churches, and she's going to call this, I believe, Song Book. Song for the Seasons is what it's called. And so each church represents a different season. So we have summer, fall, spring, and winter. And then she's got snowflakes, leaves, flowers, and pinwheels for the different months. So really cute quilt. And she, of course, she used AccuQuilt with it. So it'll be easy to cut out and put together. This is one that I just finished up. You know, sometimes your quilt projects, they stay on the design wall a little too long. This one was on the design wall at home for a while. I had the center part of it done. I just had to put on 3 borders and it sat up on the wall for probably 3 months. So this one is called Ophelia Tiles, and this was from the Ophelia line. It was by Northcott Fabrics, and it's a real subtle neutral kind of color palette with big white peonies flowers. And let me show you this one. So it's a little quilt. It's kind of a throw size. You could add more borders to it if you wanted to. We have a lot of these fabrics still left, so if you want to give this one a try. We also got in new colors in these kind of basics that go along with the main flower design. They come in lots of different colors now. We have a blue colorway, a teal colorway, gray, real pretty soft colors that mix in well with other fabrics. So this one is Ophelia Tiles, and we have patterns and fabrics here in the shop. And this was fairly easy to make. It just took me a long time to finish it. But soon it will be quilted too. So the next project is, it's called Gandy Glow Christmas Tree. And it is, I think Gandy Glow is a Scottish name. There's a novelist that writes a bunch of different stories about quilting, and her name is Patience Griffith Quilts. And the book that's titled on the front here is called It Happened in Scotland, so maybe some of you have read the different novels. But this quilt was made to go along with this particular novel. And it's a great little easy pattern to do. They are half rectangles, and the template comes with the pattern. And so you get a template like this for a half rectangle, and it is in a neon green, so you can't lose it. So what you're going to do is you're going to cut different triangles for the different rows, because you're going to sew them together in rows to create the Christmas tree. And when you cut out the rectangles, you're going to cut the strips first, and then you're going to lay the template on the strip, and you're going to cut and then turn it and cut and work your way down the strip, cutting all the triangles that you need. So here I have 2 of the triangles, and when you have to sew triangles together, a lot of times you need to kind of shift them just a little bit so that they are a 1/4 inch tail hanging off of each side. It just helps it work out so that then they will be straight across and they'll match up perfectly. I don't know why, but you know, angles are funny that way. So you're going to make up a bunch of these, and that's what the Christmas tree is made out of, with addition to some background rectangles that create the different rows. So let me show you what the quilt looks like. The quilt is much bigger than I thought it was going to be, and you probably won't even be able to see the bottom, but once it's all quilted up and hanging in the shop, I think it's going to be great at Christmas time. I can't wait to have it all done. I added a much larger border on mine. I did a 6-inch border. So this is pretty much a twin size quilt. So if you want it throw size, then don't add such a large border. Maybe just put a binding on it and make it a throw size for your couch. So here is the tree, as much as I can show you. And you could do this in lots of different colors. They have one done on the front cover of the pattern that has multiple colors and plaids and stars and all different kinds of prints. The back side they have more like what I did here, which was with greens and teals. And they did theirs with a white background, but I loved this gray batik that we had here that looks like it has snow on it. So it made the perfect background fabric, especially with the teal color here. So that's Gandy Glow, and this is going to be on the calendar for October to take a class if you'd like to. So if you want to do that, let me know and I'll save a pattern and template for you. So the next quilt I have for you is one that I've kind of designed myself, and you can see it started with a line drawing, a rough line drawing, just to give me an idea of where I wanted to place the different quilt blocks around it. And so we got this great panel in, and I can't remember the name of it right now, but you'll know it when you see it because it has a giant snowman on it. It's a 1-yard panel, cardinals, snowman, Christmas trees, the classic things that you want for your Christmas quilt. And so I've added sawtooth stars in green and red. I also added in some pinwheels over here, Christmas pines with a candy stripe border around them. And then I also opened up the AccuQuilt snowflake die, which is really a nice one. It's a good size snowflake, and it creates 3 different styles of snowflakes, and I put that in the block you see here. And then there's also a block down here at the bottom where I reversed the colors and did, let's see if you can see it, white with blue snowflakes on it. So it was a lot of fun to design something, centered around this panel piece. And this will be a nice throw size for the couch at Christmas time. And I'm just going to stop it right where it is here. And when I quilt it up, I think this is going to be a lot of fun to do a lot of free motion quilting in, a lot of swirls in this. I can see a lot of swirls and snowflakes in this one. And then I'm just going to bind it with a red polka dot. I think will be the perfect ending for this one. And so name for this one hasn't come out yet, but this will also be a class hopefully in October or November in the new classroom over at the new quilt shop. And so if you're interested in this one, you should probably let me know or come in and get at least your panel and the fabrics that you want to do yours in. The class, I will not have a pattern for this one, so if you want to make this one, you're going to have to take the class to make the quilt top. And I already have a couple of people that are already ready to do that, who have got a sneak peek at this one. We're switching from Christmas, and we're going to bring in some Halloween. And the one I have here on the table in front of me, I rushed it a little bit too much, and I didn't measure my borders. And so it's kind of wavy, as you can see here. And one of the things that when you make a quilt from a pattern, and they tell you what size to cut the borders, and this is a pieced border, even though it's to the size that it was supposed to be, for some reason my background blocks here were just a slight bit too big, and so when I went to put the borders on, it's too tight, so that's what's making it pucker. And so I'm probably going to have to take off the borders and trim down the quilt top to the border size. And what would have prevented that is if I would have measured my quilt top first. And to measure for borders, you want to measure down the center vertically and get a length, and that is what size your sides are going to be. Then you're going to sew those on, and you're going to then measure across the center horizontally, and that's what's going to tell you what size to make the border for the top and the bottom. And that's how you should do a border instead of rushing through things. The other thing that I want to say about this one is, instead of cutting out strips of fabric to make the strings for the spiders, I use black rickrack, and that's a great way to make straight lines like this too. The only thing is that when you use rickrack, and what could be helping with causing this problem, is that I think you really need to heat set that rickrack to shrink it up before you put it onto your piece to sew it down, so that you don't get any puckering. And you really want to make sure that it's like glued down, and let the glue dry and then sew through it, just to hold it down. Don't just go directly and sew on it without it, shrinking up in place there. So just a couple of tips. This one I'm going to have to take it apart and put those borders back on, but it'll be done in no time, and then I can get to the fun part, which is appliquing these little guys on the machine. So just a few tips out there for what you shouldn't do. That quilt runner was from the book Festive Fall Quilts. This book has a lot of great quilt blocks in it, a lot of runners, and there's some towels in here that they did. There are placemats, there are full-size quilts, just a lot of great different patterns, and I've already picked out another one that I'm going to start. Here's the spiders, and you can see next to it is another table topper that would look great on a round table or a square table with some pumpkins and everything in it. Just a lot of cute different patterns. There's a nice real modern one in here that I would love to make. It has a lot of neutral backgrounds and then some really colorful leaves on the top of it. So it's this one right here. I really want to make that one. That one just sings to me. So the next one that I'm going to make out of the book, and you can see that the book comes with full-size pattern pieces. And the next one I'm going to make is this giant sunflower. So there's patterns on both sides. They got this crazy turkey here that would be a fun one to make too. But this is the full-size flower. And in the center of it, I have it marked here so you can kind of see a picture of it. The center of the sunflower is pieced squares. And in the pattern they wanted those to be 1.5 by 1.5 inch squares. Well, I don't know who has time for 1.5 by 1.5. If you do, more power to you. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to make mine 2 inches or 2.5 instead. So I have created a strip piece here for what my center blocks are going to be like. And all I have to do is make sure that the piece that I sew together is big enough to fill in the center oval. And so here are the other colors that I'm going to put with it. So of course this will be the sunflower yellow. We've got some pretty greens, and then in theirs they did a green background with green squares going around the quilt. I chose to do blues because I just love yellow and blue and green together. It's just a really fresh combination. So these are the colors that I'm going to use. And this one shouldn't take much time at all because the pieces are so big. But it'll make a really nice wall hanging for the fall. So while I have this out, I wanted to talk about lines and how to keep your strip set lines nice and straight. And so a tip that I like to use is to, when you're sewing your strips together, of course you always want to start with the best ruler that you can. And for us, our favorite ruler here is the Quilter Select rulers. They have an anti-slip coating over the entire back side. So when you put them on fabric, it almost makes like a suction and you can't even move it. So you have these little knobs on here that you put, and you hold the ruler like this so that you can move it and cut and move it and cut. But the ruler doesn't slip. Like sometimes when you get up to the top, the ruler will slip on you and then you have to recut your strip. It doesn't happen with these rulers. They're really worth every penny that you pay for them. They come in lots of different sizes. My favorite sizes are, of course, the 6 by 24. It's good to have a 3 by 12. And then as far as squares go, I always like to have a 12.5 inch, a 6.5 inch, and then I like to have a couple of small ones. So either get a 3.5 inch or a 4.5 inch. It just makes for trimming things really nice. This is great for squaring up the corners of your quilt before you put your binding on. So they all have their specialties and reasons why you want to use a different ruler than just having one ruler. It just makes life a lot easier. After you've cut your strips, these are 2.5s, and you're going to strip them together. A tip that I'd like everyone to kind of remember is that when you sew your strips together, you're going to sew the first one maybe top to bottom, but when you sew on the next strip on the other side, you're going to come from the bottom up to the top. And what this helps prevent is the fabric, if you sew the same way the whole time, say you have maybe 6 strips in a row, they will kind of start leaning one direction instead of staying straight. And so if you take and sew up to down and then down to up, when you're sewing different strip sets together, they're going to stay more square. It just works out that way. So, good way to have straight strips. A couple of other things that go along with our finish line. We have diagonal seam tape. Diagonal seam tape has 1/4 inch lines on it. It is for on your sewing machine, and what it does is it comes out from where your stitch line is going to be, down where your needle position is, and you lay the tape on, following that down. And what it does is you can, when you have to draw a line on a square and to sew it diagonally, this will help you stay on a line before you even get it underneath you don't even have to draw the line. You can just send your 2 pieces through diagonally, and you just follow the diagonal on the lines. So it's a nice little handy tool to have to mark lots of different things too. So it's diagonal seam tape, and it's by Cluck Cluck Sew, and it's kind of opaque so you can see through it too. Another line that I want to share is the Choco liners. And so these are pens that have a very tiny chalk wheel in them, and they're filled with chalk down here in the bottom, and you can get refills for them for when they get empty. But this is like one of the few things that I like to mark quilt tops with. I like chalk better than blue pens. Blue pens, you're always risking them not coming out permanently. Frixion pens, I would never mark a quilt top with for quilting with a Frixion pen, because you do run the risk of when the quilt top gets cold that you could see a faint white line. Yes, your quilting stitches will more than likely cover those up, but you never want to take the chance. Chalk is one of those things where you can pounce it out, and once you wash the quilt, it washes out. You just never want to hit it with an iron. Anything with pigment in it, you never want to hit with an iron. It will become permanent. So if you have one of these and it's yellow, don't hit it with the iron. Don't try to press something out until you've washed it. Just a tip for you to keep your quilt safe. So when we are using a ruler, and on the not Creative Grids. I love Creative Grids rulers too, believe me. They're great for specialty rulers. But the Quilter Select rulers have very thin lines on them, and sometimes it's hard to read the little tiny, 7/8 mark or the 5/8 mark for when you're cutting out different strip sizes. One of the things that I've shown here before, and I just think it's great for being able to see the line, are these little magnifiers that stick to rulers. And so you would find the line that you want to use, and you would stick that magnifier on there, and they just kind of grip onto the top of the ruler. And when you're using it, you can easily see, okay, there's my line. It's not so hard where you have to really get down there and look. So these are great. And each magnifier, there's a large one and a small one, and I believe the small one is like the largest. So you can see the numbers the largest. So magnifying lens sets are great for working with rulers when you have a hard time seeing the line. And so one of the other little things I wanted to show you that we have in the shop here are magic pins. And you've probably seen these. These are silicone tipped pins that you can actually, if you hit them with your iron, it's not going to melt them. They're real sturdy pins, nice and sharp, and they come in a cute little case. What I wanted to show you today was something that might be a little hard to see, so I'm going to put a white card behind it. But this is a fork pin. And what this is you have your seam lines, and sometimes when you have to match up in a block, you have two seams coming together, and like you have nesting where you're going to have thickness on one side or the other. A fork pin goes on both sides of the seam that you're trying to keep straight and keep together. So fork pins are great for that. It'll fit just right over the seam. There's enough room in here for that. And then you just kind of, what's nice is that they're tilted like this, so they can easily be grabbed and pulled out before you get to them, because of course you do not want to sew over pins. You always run the risk of knocking your, hitting it with your machine and then knocking your machine out of timing, so don't sew over pins. But fork pins are great for that kind of thing. So that's about all I have time for today, or all I have for you today. Some of the projects finished the line, some of them didn't, but of course they eventually all will. Just like our new shop, we're getting down to the finish line here. Hopefully at the end of the month, here in September, we're going to be moving next door. So it's a great new space. We just took a tour of it before we did the video tonight. It's looking really great, and we can't wait for you to come and see it. We're really excited about it, and we're really happy to be crossing the finish line soon. So have a good September, everyone. We hope to see you at the grand opening of the new shop, and we'll see you next time. Have a good day.